Done yet? Okay, there we go. Hi, everybody. I see the ticker that we are live now, so hopefully everybody can hear us. Can somebody just comment in the chat if you can? Don't see any comments in the chat. That's maybe not a good sign. I'm not sure. Okay, good.
Thank you.
Perfect. Thanks. Well, hi, everybody, and welcome to Triangle Biotech Tuesday, hosted by the North Carolina Life Science Virtual Networking Group. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Emerson Hewitt. I lead a small biotech-focused startup called Synthesis. And the community here around life sciences in North Carolina has been really beneficial to me over the past 6 years or so. And during this really unprecedented time, I just wanted to do something to try to give back to that community and try to keep it together, especially for early stage companies like ours and all the other startups in the area, and for people who are seeking jobs during this time as well. So we created the North Carolina Life Science Virtual Networking Group Slack channel. If you're not already a member, we'll post an invite link during the meeting today. And if you are, we're really glad you're a part. And if you have a topic that you'd like to present on, please let us know. Really happy this evening to be hosting Triangle Biotech Tuesday, and Ted Benson, who's going to be talking about building strong relationships as a cornerstone for collaboration. If you're new to Crowdcast, on the right side of this screen, you'll see a chat box. You can obviously post there. Anything that you post as a question, we'll be looking at that. And we can add those into the question. You can also click on ask a question and post a particular topic there that will show up for Ted to answer. And you can also vote on questions you'd like to see answered as well. And if you have any problems with your audio during the meeting, if you just refresh your browser, we found that fixes most things. And without further ado, here's Amanda von Swearingen from TBT.
Thanks, Emerson, and thanks, Matt, who's facilitating all this through Crowdcast. You might hear a disembodied voice every now and then chime in, so that's Matt, who's been helping us. And thank you to both Emerson and Matt for helping us coordinate this, our inaugural TBT virtual. For those of you who haven't attended one of our usual in-person meetings, Triangle Biotech Tuesday is a networking event for life science professionals, everything from scientists to IP and everything in between. And what we are trying to facilitate is making a community to help connect people across the whole spectrum of life sciences to really build that community. And obviously with COVID-19, we haven't been able to hold our in-person meetings due to the requirement for social distancing. So we're trying this virtual format. And what we wanted to do is try to figure out the best way of doing this. So we're trying this educational session, which Ted agreed to be the guinea pig for, for us. And for those of you who haven't been to a TBT event before, Ted's been a font of wisdom and knowledge to us for several meetings now, and he always has a interesting topic to discuss. So tonight he'll talk about the strong collaborations, which is particularly relevant in this era of virtual networking, virtual connecting, and just in general doing things virtually. So with that, I'll let Ted Benson from Corralling Chaos take over.
Okay, thank you so much to Matt running things behind the scenes. Thanks also to Emerson, of course, helping to coordinate all this, and of course Amanda as well to getting this thing off the ground again. This has been a long time coming, and a few practice rounds behind us. So hopefully we'll pull this off well. Again, please use the comments if you have anything that you want to address immediately, but in general, I'd like you to ask to put your questions in the ask a question, which is at the bottom of the screen there. And populate that as you like during the talk, and then we'll have a good chunk of time at the end for discussion and questions. Again, the objective here is to help you in your interactions with other people, and I hope that you will find this very helpful. So now I'm going to go and try to share my screen, and I'm going to allow this, and then I'm going to do a Command Tab. Now at this point, you should all see my screen, and you should see the splash page, Triangle Biotech Tuesday, Strong Relationships for Effective Collaboration. Amanda, can you tell me if you see that? Amanda, are you there? I'm not sure who can see what at this point. I've hopped back into the other thing. Matt, are you there?
Yep, sorry, we can see that just fine.
Okay, so I'm going to go back into the other now. Can you see the slide?
Absolutely.
Okay, fantastic. All right, then I'll get rolling. Okay, so the title of this talk today is Strong Relationships for Effective Collaboration. This will be about a 30-minute talk, allowing for about 20 minutes of discussion on the back end. And of course, enter your questions. I can't see them right now because I'm in the presentation, but feel free to enter your questions in the question area or in the chat on the side. So I'm going to approach this in a unique way. At the start of this, I'm going to start with what I wanted to address about this moment, where we find ourselves right now in our world, and just take a couple minutes to talk about that, because I believe you need to call out things that are the elephant in the room, and we need to address those things head on. I'm also going to then talk very briefly about myself, my background, and the company that I'm currently part of, that I started a couple of years ago. And then we'll get into the meat of the presentation, which is about building agreement through emotions, followed by creating and communicating project updates, and then a summary, and of course, as I said before, the time for Q&A. So that's the structure for the talk today. This moment, it's important for us to acknowledge where we are right now. This is a scary moment. There's a crisis going on that's affecting everyone in the world. All of us have stress, we have fear, we have pain, we have loss. Those are normal. Those are healthy responses to a stressful and strange and unprecedented situation. A key component then is recognizing that those are real, facing them as they are real, and addressing them as they are real. And keeping in mind that every single one of us is going through this together. This is not something that only one of us is going through, though it may be especially bad for one of us today or tomorrow or the next day. But we are all going through this together. And there is a sense then that we can help each other through this by recognizing that and being aware of each other's needs, concerns, stresses, and just being together as we go through this. There are so many different ways we can help each other. One of the ways I hope to help is by doing things like this tonight in order to help you guys be effective in your relationships. I'm going to be quiet here and let you read this slide for yourselves. This was part of the address by Queen Elizabeth II of the UK just a couple of days ago. And I think that underscores a lot of what we all hope to come from this. That is that people will look back on this time and will be able to say, we helped. We did something that was positive, and we did it together. And that then the success that we have coming out of it will really belong to every one of us. One last thing on this moment. People are the solution. It's not about one person or 10 people. It's about everybody. I've got a little graphic there that just shows you some of the companies that are working on various things in the biotech space. Sorry, it's a little small there. But all of us can engage in maximal physical distancing. All of us can help support essential businesses. All of us obviously are in support of our friends and family and colleagues in healthcare. Some people are focused on producing PPE, designing epidemiological models, artificial intelligence to understand where things may go, engineering solutions, and of course, biotech and pharma, which is what this group, which is what you all are about. There is only one way the world can exit this pandemic, and that is through science. So it is, I think, a really special place for us to be in. It's a position of responsibility. It's a position of duty, and it's a real honor and a privilege to be able to be in a position where all of us working together in whatever ways we can are going to make a difference in the world going forward. So I just wanted to address this moment, call it out, say it for what it is. And now we'll move on. This is a little bit about me, in case you haven't met me before. That's more or less what I look like. My background there on the sort of the center there, and then my industrial experience on the right-hand side. The principal focus of my work over 25 years has been in molecular biology, cell biology, protein biochemistry, assay design, development, and drug discovery, as well as target validation and a number of other technical pieces. And as I did that, I moved into positions of increasing responsibility and took on project, team, and group management. And having helped teams succeed for over 25 years in those contexts, together with my partner, Gerald Bonner, in the spring of 2018, we founded Corralling Chaos. And our objective is to help clients increase their profits by realizing human potential. In other words, we help organizations succeed by helping the people in them succeed, aligning culture and behavior to mission and vision, increasing retention and productivity, and developing current and future leaders. I invite you to check out our website for more details, and there's videos and all kinds of white papers and so forth and so on there. So please feel free to check that out. So this is what you actually came for. Strong relationships for effective collaboration. Fundamentally, we have an idea that individuals are succeeding on their own, and that is true. You have to put in the work, you have to put in the hours, you have to do things in order to succeed. But your success is highly contingent on the relationships you have with others. Without others, we're only able to go so far. My wife has a little sticker on the side of her computer that says, if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together. The ability to work well with others and to be effective in those relationships and collaborations will be a force multiplier for you, where you become much more effective, much more able to do more for the people around you and for the causes that matter to you. The first part of this talk is building agreement through emotions. We're going to talk about dealing honestly with emotions. We're going to talk about 5 core concerns, about the risks and power associated with those core concerns, and addressing behaviors in the workplace or in relationships in the workplace. So, how to build agreement. Fundamentally, this comes back to considering their and your emotions and acknowledging them. Now, you may have noticed that I actually tried to model this behavior at the start of this talk when I talked about this moment. We do have emotions in any moment. They tend to be transitory, they change over time. We are floating in and out of one mood or another at any given moment. But those emotions are real. They need to be understood for what they are and acknowledged and put out there so that we can talk about it. It's a great idea to discuss emotions with someone because that gives you a third party, possibly a more objective perspective on things that will allow you to understand where that person's coming from or where you're coming from. And discussing it with a third party can sometimes help. And then in this particular context, it's often very powerful to shift focus to the core concern. That is to say, a series of concerns that underlie those emotions in a workplace setting. To wit, appreciation, affiliation, autonomy, status, and role or impact. I'm sure you've heard all these words. I'm sure you have familiarity with some of these concepts, at least if not all of them. So we're going to do a little bit deeper dive into each one of these now. So looking specifically at appreciation. We want appreciation. It's a form of validation, essentially. Those of us who are engaged in any activity, we want to know that it's making a difference. We want to know that somebody cares about the work. It's astonishing to me how rarely people say thank you for things when they're in a workplace environment. But it's an amazing thing to do. If you say thanks to a coworker, to a peer, to someone you're managing, or even to your manager, there can be a really positive attribute that comes out of that, which is a sense on their part that, hey, they're validated, they've been listened to, they're understood. Finding merit in what others say and do is a profoundly powerful way of addressing that need for validation and acknowledging someone in the room so that they know that, hey, they really matter in this organization. Building affiliation is a little bit similar to that, but really speaks to being part of a broader team. So it's not just that you feel like you're appreciated, it's that you feel like you are contributing to the whole. This is generally most effectively done by looking at what are the ties that are beyond sort of the regular everyday ties. So what other things do you have in common? Similar to building a friendship based on commonality or common interests. A critical component of building affiliation is not just that you belong to a team, but that you have a one-on-one relationship with people or individuals in that team. Particularly for managers, this is very important. But for all of us, if you think back at really good experiences that you've had, great work environments that you've been in, that ability to have a special relationship with several people on that team is really powerful. In fact, peer recognition is one of the most powerful forms of recognition that exists. That sense of being part of that group and being affiliated with it. Respecting autonomy, also incredibly important. Autonomy is important to individuals, and it's important in organizations in different ways. To individuals, autonomy is important because, again, it's a form of validation. It's a form of saying, yes, I trust you to do this. In terms of organizations, it's about organizational efficiency. If I have to constantly manage someone, I can't give them the autonomy because I don't have the ability to do that psychologically, or because I'm just not sure this person's got their feet on the ground, then it's an inefficient use of my time, as well as an inefficient use of their time to constantly be having to come back and check with me. So from an organizational standpoint, you want to grant that autonomy because that increases the efficiency of the overall organization. And similarly, from a psychological standpoint, granting that autonomy helps validate the individual and help them feel like they're more part of the team. So it's a win-win for everybody. But you do have to be realistic. You can't just have somebody walk in the door and expect them to pick up something and start working on it. You need to be able to monitor that. Trust but verify was the old slogan from the Russians, right? Trust but verify. Give autonomy in stages over time. Above all, when you're engaging individuals, you make suggestions to them. You don't tell them things, you ask. You seek their ideas and input. Indeed, one of the most powerful ways to have a team gel when you've got a good bunch of people there that you want to really work well together going forward is to invite their ideas, their input, and have them be part of the solution. Have them be part of the problem-solving process. You may or may not wish to delegate problem-solving authority to them, but having them be part of the process and building the solution is a tremendously powerful approach. I once ran a team where we had hundreds of genes to clone in parallel, and I got the best people I could from the group I had to work with, and I made sure that they understood the process and how we were going to standardize this and streamline it and industrialize it. And then I helped them the first few times as they were getting off the ground in that process. And then as I saw them take off, they just took off. I just let them go. I could see they had all the pieces they needed, and I just checked in on a regular basis to make sure the project was proceeding well, and it went beautifully. There were a few blips here and there, but it went really well because I was able to make sure that there was a staged autonomy. I got their ideas to improve the process. It wasn't just a sort of head top-down sort of thing. And as a consequence, the team gelled extremely well and produced very, very high-quality work in a very timely way. So autonomy is incredibly important. Acknowledging status. This gets back to, again, validation. See a common theme here? Having people understand that they have a role and that their role is recognized within the group is really important. One of the most seductive sentences in the English language is, "Can you give me some advice?" No one says no to that. It's a really positive thing. Maybe somebody says no. Maybe somebody says no you don't really want to work with. But most people, most of the time, if you ask them for their advice, my gosh, talk about validating somebody. That makes people feel like they know something. They're a subject matter expert. It's a really powerful way of helping somebody feel like they are contributing and that their status is being acknowledged, whatever level they may be in the group. And that's incredibly valuable. Finally, understanding roles. The three key qualities of a role come down to purpose, meaning, and not a pretense. Viktor Frankl, if any of you are familiar with him, has written very, very beautifully about man's search for meaning. Politically correct. And these days we would say person's search for meaning or everyone's search for meaning. Fundamentally, he was writing decades ago. But fundamentally, we want meaning in our work. We want purpose in our work. And understanding what the purpose of that is within the context of the organization, within the context of the mission of the organization, and within the context of the meaning to the individual performing it is really powerful. When I was at GSK at one point, we were doing a program looking at various motivators in the organization. And one of the things that we came up with was as a repeating problem was that individuals who were deep scientists, excellent scientists, really wonderful people, they were very, very into their subject area. But they apparently were sometimes having problems really seeing the broader context of their work. Because their task was extremely technical and, talking about assay validation or statistical analyses and database analyses, very fine, technical, detailed stuff, really deep stuff. And they didn't feel like they had a connection to the bigger picture. And so we addressed this by creating town halls once a month where a patient would come in who had been taking a GSK medicine. And the town hall was open to everybody in the organization. It was widely publicized. And that patient would come in, sit down on the stage, and be interviewed by somebody about what their life was like before they got sick, what their life was like when they got sick, and how the medicine that they now took was making it possible for them to live a better life or simply even to live. And you can imagine that there were times when there wasn't a dry eye on the house at the end of that town hall. It was a powerful way of connecting people to the purpose and meaning of their work that was very, very helpful in bringing them together as a team and reinvigorating their efforts. So here are the risks of ignoring cause concerns. You see on the left side, the core concerns we just discussed, and you can see some discussion there about how you sort of feel in those situations and what that feeling is to take appreciation if you don't have that met, you get angry, you get impatient, you tend to react negatively, and actually contrary to your own interests. It's a fascinating piece here because if you go through each one of these categories, there's nothing really good here. I put this in a red box because this is a bad place to be. You don't want to be, and you don't want your colleagues or your coworkers or your boss to react negatively, to go it alone, to be rigid, to be deceptive, untrustworthy, or frustrated. That's a terrible place to be. So, these are the risks of ignoring these concerns. On the other hand, the power of meeting those core concerns. If people feel appreciated, it makes them enthusiastic, it makes them more caring. If they feel affiliated, there's compassion, there's contentment. And as a result, you get cooperation, greater working together. Autonomy leads to creativity, status to trust, trustworthiness, role to being fulfilled. So this is the other side. And who wouldn't want to work in an environment that encouraged you to cooperate, to be creative, to be trustworthy, to be fulfilled, and to work with people who were in that same space? So meeting those core concerns, dealing with those emotions, understanding the underlying core concerns, and addressing them in a constructive and I would argue proactive, not reactive, but proactive way, is going to lead to much greater team cohesion. Moving on. One last piece in this section, and that is addressing behaviors. These are things that you can talk about fairly readily. And the reason for that is because all these things on the left side are objective things. You can even document these things and keep track of them. What do people say? How do they say them? What are their expressions? What are their body language? Well, in our virtual working environment, that might be a little tricky. But you can hear the way they say things, and you can also see how they're delivering on their work assignments. Those are objective things that can be clearly and easily discussed and that tie back into those meeting those core concerns. Are you encouraging your coworkers? Are you building trust with them? Are you doing those things that really generate positive results for the team? Or are you not? That's part of this whole behaviors piece. You can talk about it either way. What you don't want to talk about are the more subjective things or the things that are inside somebody else's head that, well, not one of us is really a good mind reader. So their way of thinking, their disposition, their personal meaning or their personal values, because then you're getting into a very sticky area and it's difficult to really speak to those. And you might run the risk of offending somebody. If I say to somebody, hey, I heard you yelling down the hall yesterday, that's not very effective at getting those people's attention. You probably don't want to do that. It's going to make you less effective. That's an okay conversation to have in the context of a one-on-one. Saying to someone, hey, I don't like the way you looked at that guy over there, and I don't like the mood you have. Mood is extremely subjective, and that's extremely hard to discuss, and it's probably not going to be a constructive approach. So again, addressing behaviors. This is just a quick overview of that. So in summary, when we're talking about these emotional pieces, it boils down to simply two words: be kind. Especially in today's environment, especially with the stress that we're all going through, we need to understand that a lot of people are under stress right now, and that being kind is always going to benefit everyone. Be kind. The second part of this talk, specifically on communicating project status, is simply on the equation deliverables equal success. So if you are doing the right things to establish connections emotionally with people, and you're working well with the team that you have, you need to deliver. So in this section, very quickly, we will talk about intentional planning, clarifying expectations, sharing vision and alignment, speaking with numbers, and the golden prize at the end, the most effective management tool, which we'll get to, but not after we do the other ones first. Intentional planning. Intentional planning is one step at a time. Sorry, I've left the word A out at the top there. But one step at a time. Intentional planning. You start with a goal and your end date, and you plan backwards by the milestones that you need to achieve in order to get to that goal. You ask people around you, people on the team, again, this is the ask, don't tell piece, to set the deadlines. What do you think, Tom, is a reasonable time frame to get this done? Sue, is it something we think we can do by the end of the month? And then as needed, adjust based on their input. And that means their input. Sometimes you may hear things that maybe you didn't expect to hear, but you have to understand that part of your job is to take that under advisement. And sometimes even when you're getting information you don't like, it's critically important to incorporate it. And then use completion status. We'll come back to this in a second, but talking with numbers is a really good way of, again, focusing on the objective instead of the subjective. Hey, Frank, is this project just about done? Oh, yeah, we're just about done. What does that mean? Whereas, hey, Frank, how far along are we now? 50%? 60%? Oh, no, we're at 75%. Okay, that I can work with. If he says 30%, then I need to talk to him and understand what the holdup is and what's going on and what support he needs. Finally, appreciate and reward each milestone. That's right, I'm coming back to that word again. It's appreciation, it's validation. Hey, Phyllis, you did a great job on this, amazing work. You managed to knock this out in no time, great stuff. And now the next step is what? So again, by rewarding that, even just verbally with a thank you, is really, really important. Another way of diagramming this is you plan backwards from your goal, and then you execute your plan to reach your goal. Clarifying expectations. This is a critical component that is sometimes overlooked, particularly in organizations that are in a rush or that are under a lot of pressure. Let others know your purpose. Don't assume that someone knows what you are trying to do or how to do it. Explain it to them. Open it up again and say, asking, does this make sense? Do you see what we're up to? Do you have any thoughts about this? What's your thought? What's your advice? Who can resist that phrase? Clarifying things, the right information means what other people need to know. If something isn't clear, it's better to get it done up front, make sure everybody's on the same page. And then again, you can use the easiest, most effective project management tool, but I'm not going to tell you that quite yet. Almost. Shared vision and alignment. Again, bottom line up front. Get to the point early. Make sure that people understand the direction of travel and understand the metrics and the parameters within that path. Cost, result, timeline, metrics, a little bit more on the next slide on that. And then do those scheduled check-ins, again, to make sure that clarity is maintained. Don't assume that clarity will be maintained throughout the project. Check back on a regular basis to make sure things are still firing on all cylinders. Talk in numbers. Objective, factual, clear. Again, if I'm saying, is the project almost done? And somebody goes, yeah, it's almost done. That's not as meaningful as if someone says, oh yeah, it's 75% done. It's 85% done. No, it's only 20% done. Having that percentage done of the milestones over the total milestones is a very powerful way of looking at things. The other important component here is to keep an updating on these things, red, yellow, green, or some system like that, so that you have a way of flagging things that are falling behind. And the critical component here is that if something is yellow, it's not an occasion to be angry with people, to be upset with people. I've been in organizations, I've seen it happen, but you don't need to have it be that way. I've also been in organizations where when something gets into that kind of situation, you can simply say, well, what do you need? What's not working here? Or do we have a reagent shortage? Is the biology not working the way we expect? Is there something wrong with the cells? Or is this simply taking longer than we expected because our estimates were not accurate? Having that be, again, that asking for advice, asking for input, working together to solve the problem is an incredibly powerful approach. Simply yelling at people because they're behind schedule generally is not effective and generally is counterproductive. And you know why? Because we've already talked in the first half of this talk about the need to validate people and have them included and part of the group. If you're yelling at people, they're not part of the group. They're being pushed to the side and they're not going to feel like they're really part of the team. So again, yellow milestones, it requires support. Red milestones maybe require even more support. A great question to ask somebody is, I'm so sorry to hear that, or a great way to say it to someone is, I'm so sorry to hear that's falling behind. What do you need? What do you need right now, or what are you going to need? And what is your plan? How do you want to get out of this? Again, asking somebody to plan, you are deliberately asking them to engage in the problem-solving process. And then you're getting the advice directly from the person who would do the work. So theoretically, that's the most informed person in the organization on that task. And of course, a milestone shouldn't be considered done until it's actually reported out. And you need to make sure you figure out how you're going to report that in advance so that everybody has an idea. Might be a weekly meeting. I've been in organizations like that. I've also been in organizations where we did an end of day report or an end of shift report where milestones were updated on a daily basis. Depending on the process in the organization, any of that will work. Here it is, the most effective project management tool. You've been waiting so long for it. And it's just this slide that seems like an anticlimax, but it's not an anticlimax. It's a beautiful picture showing you going on to the next step and succeeding in whatever you do simply by the 3 W's. Who does what by when? Who does what by when? If you have a goal, let's say you want to make a pizza, you're going to have to figure out, well, who's going to buy the ingredients and when are they going to do that? And then who's going to put it all together and who's going to cook it? And it may all be one person, but the point is, if you're defining a project by who does what by when, this is so simple, and it is, I won't say foolproof, but it is amazingly simple and functional in operation. So, taking all this into account, what does communicating project status boil down to? Again, how about that? 2 words, be effective. Just that, be effective. If you're going to communicate project status, you want to be able to have people understand, speaking the same language about the same topic in the same way, so that as little misunderstanding as possible will occur. Occasionally it will occur, and occasionally things will slip, and that's okay. That's part of the role of managing these things. You're there to help. And if you're communicating well, you're going to be effective. So how do we summarize this? Well, really, the first part was very much focused on emotions, and the second part was very much focused on the rational. So we talked about the emotional, and we talked about the rational. And the scientists out there may be thinking, this looks suspiciously like a Venn diagram. And you're right, it is a Venn diagram. And emotional, remember, boiled down to be kind. Rational, you remember, boiled down to be effective. And so where the 2 sets intersect is the common set of an experience and a workplace that is both emotionally rewarding and rationally satisfying. A sweet spot for organizations and, critically, for the people in them. Organizations are nothing more than groups of people. And having them work together in an emotionally rewarding and rationally satisfying way creates very strong bonds, very effective organizations, and very happy people. And what do you get? You get strong relationships for effective collaboration. So that's the talk. I hope you've enjoyed it. If you'd like to check us out on the web, we have free content on our website there at the bottom. We're also on LinkedIn. We have regular updates there on our LinkedIn account or page. You can follow us there. And also, you're very, very welcome to connect with me on LinkedIn. I'm happy to have conversations offline. Certainly, we can't network completely right now, but I'm happy to have one-on-one phone calls with anyone who'd like to contact me through LinkedIn. So that's it. And we are now ready for the questions. And I think that means I have to go out of this portion and stop sharing my screen, I think. Let's see what happens. Okay, so Matt, it looks like we have some questions here. Are you going to feed them to me, or should I just answer them directly?
You can go ahead and answer them, and I will mark them as answered as you go through, and you can pick and choose the ones you want to talk about.
Oh, great. So I can ignore anyone I want. I like this arrangement. Okay. Yes, worked in jobs. So I'm looking at something that's got 4 votes, so it's at the top of the pile. So yes, right. Collaboration. Right. Yes. Okay. High turnover. Okay. So I'll read this. Someone's saying that they have worked in jobs that did not value effective collaboration, and as a result, there was high turnover, and this individual eventually left. Any suggestions about how to start these types of conversations within an office or at an organization? So great question, Lauren. Thank you very much for that. In a nutshell, you need to judge for yourself what the organizational tolerance is for these kinds of questions. In particular, if you have members of the organization with whom you can have these conversations who are in a position to effect some degree of change, ideally this would be your manager. But I understand that's not always an easy conversation to have. A good way of approaching things in general is a problem-solving approach, which is to say, I think I've seen the following problem here, and I was wondering if we could do this. Now, if it's a really touchy situation, maybe you don't even want to say what the problem is. Maybe you want to take a purely solutions-based approach. It could be along the lines of having more one-on-ones or having group activities or trust-building exercises that aren't just, kumbaya holding hands kind of exercises. So to start these types of conversations, I would suggest you create a trusted network of individuals you can talk to about this. and that you broach these in one-on-one meetings with individuals. The reason I emphasize one-on-one meetings is that when people are in a group setting, oftentimes their perceived roles will take predominance over their sense of self, and individuals may feel like they have to sort of guard themselves. Whereas if you're in a one-on-one situation, it's just you, it's just me, we're just having a conversation as people. Some of that role dynamic comes out, and you're more able to address things person to person. So I would suggest a solutions-based approach, speaking person to person, talking to other people in the organization, coming in with something that was really intended to benefit things. Having said all that, there are also organizations for which this is an alien concept, that they are used to high turnover and used to treating people like cogs. And they do that because people come and go anyways. Why should they invest in those people? And it becomes obviously a self-reinforcing or self-fulfilling prophecy. So is it worth having those discussions? Yes, it's worth having those discussions, but approach them not from, you guys suck, and more, hey, I had an idea of ways we could do some really cool stuff here that would really be a positive thing. Maybe not even mentioning what the problem is, again, based on what your experience is. Lauren, please let me know if that's helped answer that question. You can ping me on the chat, or not. I hope that's addressed. Yes. Okay. Great. Awesome, Lauren. And again, feel free to get in touch with me on LinkedIn, and we can have a dialogue offline. Awesome. Great. And again, we can do a phone call or something, and I can give you more specifics. How can one identifies others' emotions so that you can acknowledge and address? And this one's coming from Amanda. It's a great question, Amanda. In general, most of us are crappy mind readers. And so having a one-on-one conversation, again, I'm going to come back to that again and again, because having a one-on-one conversation can be a really powerful thing. Ideally, in some respects, you have it off-site. So get lunch together somewhere, say, hey, let's have lunch somewhere. And then you have a sort of a step down in the intensity of the conversation. This would allow you to then understand them better and to ask. I noticed the other day you seemed a little anxious about da-da-da. Was that just my imagination, or was that kind of an unhappy moment for you? A really powerful tool, and you'd want to use this sparingly, but a really powerful tool, I'll give you two really powerful tools, is the I'm sorry tool. And that is where you sense that something's not quite right, and you step up and you apologize. Even if you don't think you did something wrong, even if you don't know what it is that you did wrong. Simply saying, hey, I noticed we kind of had a weird moment back there in the hallway. I'm really sorry if I did anything weird there. Two things that does. One, it immediately sets up a dynamic of reciprocity, whereas the individual may feel that they need to be sorry back, and you lower the temperature of the conversation, and you begin to acknowledge each other's human needs and the ability to communicate hopefully more effectively. The other thing that I would recommend is what I call a Jedi mind trick, which is very helpful in one-on-ones, which is pausing. Ask someone a question and then wait for them to answer. Many of us are very interested in getting the answer to our question, and so we'll just ask the question again, and maybe that's appropriate, but sometimes it's good to back off and stop and let the individual respond, particularly if they're introverted or they're just not sure how to articulate what it is they're saying. The ability to say, I noticed the other day that I was uncomfortable with the situation that we had, and I'm sorry that if I came across in any unusual way. Did you feel okay about that? And is everything okay? Or what are your thoughts? And then letting them think, giving them that moment, that time to think, because then you're allowing them and you're validating them again to help them engage the way in which they want. Okay, let's see. Next one. Amanda, I hope that answered your questions. Okay, here we go. Can you give some examples of how you've gainfully employed some of these tools and methods in the context of virtual meetings during COVID-19? Yes, I can. Great question from Mr. NC Life Science Networking. I think I know who you are, Mr. NC Life Science Networking, but we'll let that go. So yes, I can actually. A couple weeks ago, I was talking to some folks about a group that we're working with, so sort of random folks in industry who are interested in cultural aspects of companies in North Carolina. Great, thank you, Amanda. I'm glad that helped. Now back to COVID-19. So one of the people in this group well, everybody in the group was like, well, we should meet sometime soon, and we should talk sometime soon about blah, blah, blah. And one person in the group specifically said, I don't want to wait. I want to meet right away because I need an answer to these questions. I need to know how to support my people in this situation. And I made the point of saying, if one of us really feels strongly about this, then there's clear value here for us to do something about this. And so we set up a teleconference specifically around the issues that this individual was having. He's a CEO at a local company. And he's a genuinely wonderful human being. He really wanted to help his people get through the stress they're going through right now. And so we had this conversation, and it was incredibly rich and incredibly beneficial. And we did it because he was able to express his need, and because I validated that need in saying, I hear you, I understand you. Hey, everybody, let's get together and talk about this and give each other advice on how to deal with this organizationally and personally. And so we did that. So yeah, we gainfully employed those tools and methods in the virtual meetings around COVID-19 and the impact it was having on these various organizations, in particular this one guy's organization. And I'm even happier to say that by the end of that meeting, I asked that CEO, was this helpful to you? And he said, yes, it was incredibly helpful. It validated some of the things he was already thinking about. It gave him completely new ideas and perspectives. So it was good, good, good. So there you go. I'm pretty sure I answered that question, but let me know, Mr. NC Life Sciences Networking, if I did not. Next one, how can one manage conflicting needs, expectations between different coworkers or groups? I'm gonna say, communicate, and then communicate. And while you're at it, communicate. It is certainly the case that people can misunderstand each other, even in the best of circumstances, even in the best of intentions. People can misunderstand each other. It's human nature. The other day, my business partner and I were talking about music. We were talking about a band called British Sea Power that he'd never heard of. And I just mentioned to him, I said, yeah, you might enjoy these guys. I've got a couple of their albums. And he said, oh, I had never heard of them. And so he looked them up online, but he couldn't find them. And he said, there's no such thing as British Sea Power. And I said, yes, there is. And I said, they've got a couple of albums out, like a couple of years ago, but still. Turned out he was looking with the word not C, S-E-A, which is the band, part of the band's name, but the letter C. He looked up capital C, power. And I think all I got was like stuff about programming and C, right? It was just bizarre. I didn't do anything wrong. He didn't do anything wrong. We just had a significant different assumption about what the communication was about. So in terms of managing conflicting needs, expectations between different coworkers and groups, again, in the second part of this talk, I talk specifically about clarifying, aligning, making sure that things are clear up front, and then maintaining that clarity and maintaining that rational structure and framework for discussion, so that if things diverge, hopefully you catch it early. And I'm trying to do this so you can see this on the screen with my hands. If they diverge, hopefully you can catch it early, because if you can catch it back here, there's less of a gap. If you're catching it out here, the gap is really huge. So that gets back to having those check-ins, having those highly structured, objective, numerical senses of where progress is in a project. I hope that answered your question, Amanda. If it didn't, let me know. I see we got about 10 minutes left. I agree with this methodology, however, feel this is not being coached to most line managers. Most rule by fear. Why is that? Scott, I'm sorry that you've seen this in the workplace. I've seen it too. And it's a terrible thing, and it's a bad thing. And hopefully those managers will get their wrists slapped. But realistically, some organizations care more about throughput than they do about people. In my experience, those organizations tend not to retain the best people. And the good people leave because they have the option to leave, and they're not going to put up with that crap. Every now and then you have amazingly wonderful people who get trapped in organizations like that, either because they feel a deep sense of obligation or loyalty, or because they haven't had any other experiences. They think this is normal. They think this kind of abusive workplace relationship is just the way it is. It doesn't have to be that way. And again, the ruling by fear is easy. It's simple. It doesn't take time. Having been a manager of groups, I've worked with people who were just incredibly amazing and very autonomous, and they could just go bang, 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 and they could go and do stuff, and that was awesome. I also worked with people who needed more coaching and more mentoring and more support. And that was really valuable, except that it took more time on my part. Let me give you an example of one particular instance. Great guy, hardworking guy, was in this organization for many years and transferred into my group in a reorg and dropped the ball on a major project within the first month and dropped it badly. And my boss was saying, get rid of him, just fire him. That's unacceptable. But I knew the guy had been in this organization for a while, and I knew that he'd had success. And I didn't want to just throw him out. I wanted to understand what the problem was in the hopes that maybe we could solve it. And so I took my time and I invested in him. I spent 16-hour days with him for a week to try and get the project back on track. We still couldn't get it on track. Okay, fine. Let's really understand what the underlying problem was. And I said, I want to know what you've done every hour for the last 2 weeks prior to this drop. And the guy was really nice and really technically capable. And in fact, that was his problem. He was so nice and so technically capable that everybody came to him for help, and he helped everybody whenever they needed help. And so he never got around to his stuff. And when we looked at his schedule, he was doing everybody else's job. So by sitting down with him and understanding that, I was able to then enable him to walk away from those things. I said, tell those people that your mean old boss, Ted, isn't going to let you do that stuff anymore. They have to do it. And we'll get them the training. We'll make it a development opportunity for them so they can do it. And then you can focus on your core responsibilities. Within 6 months, he was off the PIP we had him on. Within a year, he was outperforming. And within a year and a half, he had earned a promotion. Why was that? Because he worked his butt off. He was an incredibly good guy. And because I took the time to invest in him. Most managers rule by fear because it's faster to just yell at people. That's not right. That's not the way to treat people. But it's fast and it's easy. I'm afraid that's probably the answer. So working on relationships, again, if you work on relationships and you build relationships, then you're something that's much more important than simply the transactional nature of a workplace where somebody's slapping something together and then they're getting paid for it. Okay, so I hope, Scott, that addressed it. Again, feel free to ping me on LinkedIn. We can discuss more offline. When in go mode, it's easy to forget the emotional piece. Do you have a way you perform a reality check? That's a really good question. And my suggestion would be that you don't need to have a simple way to perform a reality check. Sometimes the best thing to do is to have some kind of programmatic process in place where, for example, I'll give you a random idea that I think many of us have seen in academia and even perhaps in the workplace, which is like a Friday afternoon beer or some kind of social event where people can have a moment to step aside from the immediate term deliverable, what I call the ops grind, and have that step back. Formally, you can create retreats, you can create all kinds of things, even just a group meeting once a week, but some way that you can actually have a connection to other people, going out to lunch with coworkers, whatever it is, whatever works for you and for that group. But the key piece I'm trying to put there is some kind of functional, repeatable, locked-in process so that it doesn't come down to chance. So that's the way I would underscore, do you have a way to perform a reality check? Create a process for you. Good processes support people. I'm trying to show you supporting with my hands here. I don't know if the camera's picking up. Good processes support people and bad processes crush them. All right. So creating a process that works for people by involving them in the creation process, that's the key, helps to keep that happening. And if you build something where every Friday we're going to go out to lunch or whatever it is you do, to give people that chance to step away from each other, see each other as human beings, perform those sort of necessary connections, even online. I tell you what, I wrote a piece on LinkedIn. If you want to go and look at it, it's on our website as well, called Staying Social While Staying Distant. Please, if you don't read mine, read somebody else's. Think about what's in that, because we are isolated in ways we've never been before. And the ability to connect with each other is at risk. And that's not good for our mental health. It's not good for our functional health. So I kind of went off topic there, but I think you get the idea. Anyways, I hope that helped you, Sherry. Again, please feel free to connect offline. How do you suggest sharing feedback with someone who you believe will not be receptive to hearing it? Yeah, that's a great question, Mike. I agree. That's going to depend in part on the nature of your relationship and what you want to accomplish with that feedback. Be honest with yourself. Sorry, I'm throwing it back at you, but I am throwing it back at you because the question is, what is the purpose of that feedback? Here's the thing. If you give me feedback, let's say, Mike, after this, you feedback to me, Ted, that presentation sucked. That was the worst thing I've ever seen. It was too cash. It was too formal, whatever. What's the purpose of that feedback? Is that feedback to say, Ted, here's a way you can improve, or Ted, this is my opinion on how you might improve, or Ted, this is my opinion on what I saw you do in that one moment that I thought maybe could have been more effective by doing something else. The last piece is probably the closest thing to what someone else is likely to take on board. If I'm, to use the context of another question, if I'm just yelling at you because I don't like what you did, you're not, you may listen, you may be aware of it, you may be, okay, all right, I guess I have to do it because he's my boss, but you may also feel like, what a jackass. I don't want to work with this guy. I don't want to work for this guy. In which case, I may achieve the short-term push to get you to do something, but I've blown the relationship and ultimately you're going to leave anyways. Oh, someone's posted the article on the chat. Very nice. Thank you, Mr. NC Life Science Network. So getting back to your question, Mike, sharing feedback with someone, be honest with yourself. An unexamined life is not worth living, as I believe Socrates said. Maybe it was Plato. Examine your motives. Examine your motives. Is your intent to tell them they're stupid? If it is, why the hell should they listen to you? It's just your opinion. On the other hand, if your intent is to help them be more effective, to be more successful, to be more productive, to be more connected to the organization as a whole, whatever it is, if you're trying to help them, then that actually answers your question, that your intent is to help them, and you tell them that. You say, I saw this thing that you did the other day, and I was thinking, it could probably be a little bit differently expressed, and you'd probably get an even better result. Or, in my opinion, I'm thinking. Again, if you can do it, you can say, sorry, but I felt that was a little odd. And maybe that's just me. So again, you're putting yourself in a position where you're not saying I'm judging you and you suck, because who wants to hear that? But saying, I think I have some ideas for you to improve. If you're open to them, I'd be happy to share them with you. Let's get a cup of coffee or something in the break room and sit down and just let me know if you'd like to talk about it. Many people are open to mentoring, but that mentoring has to be about helping them succeed, not just about making the mentor feel good, because that's pointless. Mike, I hope that's helped. If not, please, let's talk offline. Amanda asked in the addendum, cool, to Lauren's question. Oh my gosh, we're in the speed round now. I've only got 3 minutes left. Amanda asked an addendum to Lauren's question about, do you have any suggestions about how to start these types of conversations? Right. What if you don't know who to talk to about this one-on-one? Or would it be way outside your lane? Okay, I think what I'm hearing there, and feel free to ping me in the chat function if I'm way off base here. What I'm hearing is that you see that the organization has problems, not necessarily yours, and you don't know who to talk to about it one-on-one. The way outside your lane is if you're in a situation where you have, if you feel awkward about broaching the topic, then it definitely requires some deeper thought. And I really am sorry that you picked this question for the speed round, because I'm kind of jammed up for time here. It's a bigger piece. You need to be careful how you have conversations about other people. If you're saying that, you're sitting next to Sally and you see Sally is not doing the work you think she should be doing, and you go to Sally's boss, now you've undercut Sally. And if it gets back to Sally, she's not going to like it. It's much better to approach people directly who are the person that you want to talk to about this issue. And I'm sorry, but we're going to have to break there. So if anybody wants to connect with me on LinkedIn, we can pursue conversations later. And I'm going to hand it back to whoever is supposed to take it here. I don't remember who's supposed to take it here. I'm sorry.
Amanda should be showing up in just a minute. Great job, Ted. Thank you so much.
Okay, well, I hope this was very helpful for everyone. I am very open to your feedback. Anybody out there who wants to tell me what a terrible job I did or how I could have improved and gotten more effective, which is the better way of putting it, please let me know. And if there was something you especially liked, that would be great to know too. Oh, and there she is. Take it away, Amanda.
I'll be brief because I am trying to keep it to the 1 hour limit. Thank you, Ted, for giving an excellent talk as always, at least in my opinion. I think it was excellent. Just for everyone who's still with us, please, you can come back to this link after the event. It has been recorded and will be hosted here thanks to Synthesis in perpetuity, I understand. So if you want to either look at it again or show it to colleagues, it should be here for people to review. I saw that Gerald said you can also connect with him and request the slide deck if you wish. Other than that, if you liked this, if you thought this virtual format was okay, it obviously doesn't fully recapitulate in-person meeting, as Ted alluded to. And we do want to get back to that as soon as we are able, but obviously everything is in the air right now. So we will let you know as soon as we are able to reinitiate our in-person meetings, but hopefully in the meantime, a virtual format like this is a partial substitute. And if you have any suggestions for additional subjects, topics, speakers, please reach out to either myself on LinkedIn. You can post comments in the LinkedIn group, or send me an email, anything like that. We're happy to host some other events and try to sort of keep building this community as best we can despite the situation. I think if we can keep our hands at least somewhat involved virtually, I think we'll be much stronger afterwards, especially if we can maintain this for however long this may be, hopefully not too much longer. But thank you, everyone. And if you have any questions about Triangle Biotech Tuesday, you're welcome to reach out to me as well. And hopefully we'll be able to see each other again in reality very soon.